What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo.
My goodness, Merab Dvalishvili, what a performance, what an absolute domination, what a gas tank. I will venture to say that the Merab Dvalishvili that showed up and fought Petr Yan last night would have beaten any bantamweight on the roster. What say you?
I couldn't agree more. I think that Merab was like operating on a different frequency, and nobody does that sort of stuff to Petr Yan. Petr Yan is legitimately one of the most badass dudes that's ever been in the bantamweight division, and I think just the way he carries himself and everything is almost scary. And look, he needed to get back to winning ways, but Merab Dvalishvili was a big obstacle that he just wasn't able to overcome this past weekend. And I think that Merab Dvalishvili would beat absolutely anybody in the world at bantamweight, including his best friend and teammate Aljamain Sterling. Now, we've seen Aljo look really good in there many, many times, but we've never seen him look as good as Merab looked last night.
No, we definitely haven't. And Aljamain Sterling's a great champion, but Merab Dvalishvili showed us a lot of stuff that we knew about him prior, but also a few new things, because everybody knows Merab is just an absolute beast wrestler. You could probably take somebody who's not a fan of the UFC and show him a picture of Merab and say, is this guy a striker or a wrestler? And they would probably say wrestler. He's got that look. He's got that build. But the two things that I was most impressed with was, one, his striking. His striking seems to be improving by leaps and bounds every fight, and this was his best performance yet. Petr Yan's a lights-out striker. I can think of many, many good fighters and former champions that Petr Yan has put on the canvas, and Merab Dvalishvili was standing there and mixing them up with him last night, and not only mixing them up, but actually winning some of those exchanges on the feet and hurting Petr with some shots. You saw a couple times where Yan had to cover up. A couple of times it looked like his face got busted up a little bit. His eye got blacked out. So that was very, very impressive. The other thing that I was extremely impressed with by Merab was the fact that he can keep that pace for 25 minutes. You know, we've seen him only in 3-round fights up to this point, and it's like, man, this guy's got a gas tank for days, but I wonder how he would do in the championship rounds, and that was actually my biggest concern, and that's why I thought Petr Yan was going to win the fight. Boy, was I wrong. I thought Petr Yan would be able to weather the storm in the first 2 rounds and then download the data, so to speak, and come on strong towards the end of the fight. Merab was like, we'll be having none of that. I'm going to be throwing over 400 strikes at you, and I'm going to try to take you down 47 times. Literally almost 50 takedown attempts in that fight, and he didn't look like he was breaking a sweat. Not only was he not breaking a sweat, he was standing in between the rounds. He's like, won't be needing a stool either. I'll be standing in between rounds. It was one of the most impressive physical cardio performances I've ever seen take place inside the octagon.
I couldn't agree more. And I think, it was funny. One of the people commented on the short you did about how EPO took a dose of Merab. And I mean, there's literally nothing more impressive than somebody who has an endless gas tank. And everybody always points towards Colby Covington for that. He's so good when it comes to just firing off round after round and not really coming off the gas pedal. He'll push at the right pace and then he just kind of keeps moving forward. Whereas a lot of people, they'll blow all their wind in the first couple rounds, and then there's nothing left in the third, fourth, and fifth round. Man, Merab Dvalishvili really looked like he could have gone 5 more rounds, and he's going in there with an absolute killer, a former champion in Petr Yan, who's a tough night out for absolutely everybody. And there were moments in there where I'm like, dude, you're doing this so good, going for the takedowns, getting a lot of them. The cage work is perfect. I was in the UFC PI last week, and I was watching Petr Yan train and doing nothing but cage work for, an hour at a time and just shucking people off and getting a fresh body and shucking them off. I was like, man, Merab's got his hands full because Peter's already really good at keeping the fight standing up, and he's training exactly what he needs to. But that just goes to show you how good Merab's takedowns are, how good his clinch work is, how good his cage work is. The guy is truly a high-level mixed martial artist, because when you look at his striking in the past, it wasn't quite as fluid as it was last night. It was a little more clunky, and he wasn't mixing it all together that well. Last night, he was winning a lot of exchanges on the feet against Petr Yan, and I'm sitting there almost kind of cheering for him. I'm like, dude, you're doing plenty on the feet, but go back in there and take this guy back down and continue to steal minutes out of each of these rounds. But, if you've got your confidence and you've got somebody like Petr Yan moving backwards, you're taking away some of their power and you're taking away some of their ability to hurt you and knock you out. So the way he was pressuring forward was keeping him winning a lot of those exchanges on the feet, which obviously leads to great takedowns and ground control. So, man, nothing but positive things to say about Merab Dvalishvili. It does kind of suck that his best friend and teammate is the champion right now, but there's some moving pieces at bantamweight right now, and I think, we've got Aljamain Sterling fighting Triple C Henry Cejudo coming out of retirement. I think that is a big fight. It's good for the division. But I believe win or lose, Aljamain Sterling is leaving and going up to 45. He's going to try to dare to be great and go for champ status, or he's just going to try to move up, get a fresh coat of paint with some new guys at 145. And people have said he walks around at about 177, so he's massive for bantamweight, which is perfect because that ushers Merab right into that #1 contender spot and that championship spot if he's able to get the belt. But I just feel like there's so many fun fights for Merab Dvalishvili. But if I were him, I would not take another fight until it's for a title. He did enough heavy lifting on the way to the belt and then enough heavy lifting last night to earn himself a title shot. And I think what he should do, if they're trying to keep him busy or they want him to fight, I'd say, look, you can have me weigh in every time at 135 on the dot, every time there's a bantamweight title fight until I get my opportunity, but I don't need to fight anybody else right now. And if I'm Merab, that's the direction I'm taking because I think, Sugar Sean's obviously going to get the winner of Aljo versus Cejudo, and then Merab's going to have to sit and wait. So we could be waiting until next year where we see Merab's title shot. But I think he's done enough heavy lifting. He doesn't need to fight anybody else. And truly, there's nobody else in the top 5 or top 10 that he should be in there competing against because I think he just wipes them all away.
I think you're absolutely right. And the fact that Petr Yan is now 1-4 in his last 5 just speaks to how good bantamweight really is. And that is kind of the trouble for Merab, isn't it? Because you have a big name like Sugar Sean who also does have that win over Petr Yan. Now, granted, that wasn't nearly as impressive, nor was it nearly as much of a blowout. That was actually kind of a robbery in a lot of people's eyes that happened. Last night was no robbery. So you do have that factoring against Merab. I think the best thing that could happen for Dvalishvili would be if Aljamain is able to defeat Henry Cejudo and then vacates his title and goes up and tries to fight the winner of Yair versus Volk, and then the UFC will be forced to do a vacant title fight, just as we saw for John Jones and Cyril Gane, at which point they would probably do Merab versus Sugar Sean, provided that Chito Vera doesn't do something outstanding in a couple of weeks. But bantamweight is on fire right now. I mean, there is just so many good fighters. There's like 5 or 6 people that you could say, yeah, throw them in there for a title fight, and people wouldn't bat an eye because their records and resumes are very deserving.
Absolutely. We've said it on here a lot, and we're going to continue to say it this year if the bantamweights keep fighting this way. Bantamweight is the most stacked division in all of mixed martial arts. The UFC's 135ers are just clicking on all cylinders, and I think after last night, Merab Dvalishvili might have just proven to us that he's the best bantamweight on the planet.
I think he did. Thanks for watching this video, guys. We're your hub for all things combat sports. If that's your jam, we appreciate a subscribe and a like on the video, and drop us a comment down below. We'll see you next time.
Peace.